Study Section 7. Endocrine System and Related Hormones. Introduction. Each month, women of reproductive age who are not pregnant go through the cycle of fertility that results in either pregnancy or menstruation. The average menstrual cycle is 28 days, but ranges from 24 to 35 days. This cycle usually begins near the 13th year of life and continues into middle age. Then cease menopause. A female's first reproductive cycle, menarche, occurs after the ovaries and other organs of the female reproductive system mature, puberty, and responds to certain hormone. The hypothalamus controls and governs the anterior pituitary glands, which in turn governs the ovary by hormones, and finally the ovary produces hormones which control changes in the uterus. Learning outcomes. At the end of this study section, you should be able to 1. Define terms associated with the topic. 2. Describe the hormones associated with menstruation. 3. Discuss the phases of the menstrual cycle. Definition of terms. Menstruation. Menstruation is defined as the shedding of the uterus lining, endometrium, which occurs on a regular basis in reproductive age. Puberty. This is a time in life when a person becomes sexually mature. Development of secondary sexual characteristics. It is a physical change that usually happens between ages 10 to 14 years, and a number of physical and psychological changes takes place. These changes are explained in figure 7 to 1 of this diagram. 9 years, the uterus, uterine tubes and ovaries reach maturity. 10 years, the breast develops and enlarges. 11 years, pubic and auxiliary hair begins to grow. 12 years, increase in weight, height and widening of the pelvis. 13 years, fat disposition in the subcutaneous tissue, especially the tips of the breast. 14 years, commencement of ovulation and menstruation. Puberty changes between ages 9 to 14 years. Hormones involved in the menstrual cycle. There are 4 hormones involved in the menstrual cycles, namely 1. Follicles stimulated hormone. 2. Estrogen. 3. Luteinizing hormone. 4. Progesterone. Follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. As the name implies, this hormone stimulates the development of new follicles as well as the production of the hormone estrogen. This phase is called the menstrual cycle. This increase of follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the growth and develops into the ovulated eggs. Estrogen. This hormone is proved to be responsible for the continuing development of follicles within the ovaries. In the uterus, it also helps in the thickening of the endometrium as well as the cervix. Estrogen release acts as suppressor of its own release, called a negative feedback loop. This causes a surge in luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone LH. Luteinizing hormone surge in the middle of the 28-day cycle stimulates maturation and the mature ovum called ovulation from any of the above two ovaries. At this peak, the concentration of the hormone becomes so high. The egg released from the ovary should be fertilized 48 hours after its release. If it does not become fertilized, it is released along the inner lining of the uterus as part of the monthly menstruation. Progesterone. Once ovulation has occurred, the hormone progesterone releases from a structure called corpus luteum. One of the functions of progesterone includes helping to make the mucus of uterus cervix wall to be thickened, preparing for potential pregnancy. If the egg becomes fertilized, it will become implanted in the uterus and the fetus will begin to grow. If no pregnancy, it is discharged as menstruation. The phases of menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is divided into three phases, namely A. Menstrual phase, B. Proliferatory phase, C. Secretory phase. Diagram of the phases of menstrual cycle. The menstrual phase. When the ovum is not fertilized, the arterial pituitary gland withdraws the luteinal hormone after 14 days. The withdrawal of the hormone causes degeneration of the corpus luteum and the level of progesterone and estrogen therefore falls. In the case of pregnancy, the corpus luteum is supported by human chronic gonadotrophic H5G secreted by developing embryo. When progesterone is withdrawn, the cell's lining, the endometrium, disintegrates. When progesterone is withdrawn, the cell lining, the endometrium disintegrates and the capillaries break down. Depending on the high level of ovulation hormones, the functional layers of the endometrium undergo necrosis and slaughter off as shared as menstruation. The menstruation flows consist of the secretion from the endometrial glands, endometrial cells, blood from the broken down capillaries, and the unfertilized ovum. This lasts 3 to 5 days. When the progesterone and estrogen level in the blood falls to a certain level and the corpus luteum degenerates, the anterior pituitary gland resumes its activity, starts to secrete follicle stimulating hormone, and another ovarian follicle is stimulated and the next cycle is initiated. Proliferative phase. This begins as the end of the menstrual period when the actual loss of menstrual blood flow ceases and lasts for about 10 days. During this phase, the anterior lobes of the pituitary glands produces follicles stimulating hormone which circulates in the bloodstream, stimulating the growth and development of a Grecian follicles. The developing Grecian follicle produces estrogen, which is responsible for the repair and proliferation of the functional layer of the endometrium in preparation for the reception of a fertilized ovum. The endometrium becomes thicker by rapid cell multiplication, accompanied by an increase in the number of mucous secretory glands and blood capillaries. This phase ends when ovulation occurs and estrogen production declines. Secretory phase. Immediately after ovulation, the stimulating lining cell of the ovarian follicle are stimulated by utilizing hormone to develop the corpus luteum or yellow body, which produces progesterone and some estrogen. This phase lasts for 14 days. Progesterone is directly absorbed into the bloodstream and has the following effects on the endometrium. The phases of menstrual cycle. The endometrium becomes thickened on the endometrius. The secretory glands produce increased amount of watery mucus into the urine cavity. Diagram. This is believed to assist the passage of the spermatozoa through the uterus to the urine tubes, where the ovum is fertilized. There is increase in the number of glands and blood capillaries. There is similar increase in the secretion of watery mucus by the glands of the uterine tubes and by the cervical glands, which lubricates the vagina. The endometrium is now thick, soft, moist, and vascular, and is prepared, if necessary, for the reception of fertilized ovum. Study section summary. In this study section, you have learned that 1. Terms related to menstruation, and you also learned that menstruation is defined as the shedding of the uterus lining, endometrium, which occurs on a regular basis in reproductive age. 2. Follicles stimulated hormones, FSH, estrogen, luteinizing hormone, and progesterone are the hormones associated with menstruation. 3. The phases of menstruation are menstrual phase, proliferative phase, and secretory phase. End of study section 7. Thank you for listening.